We are, let's see, today is February 28th, 2002. We're at the Children's Coalition Incorporated. Name of the person being interviewed is?
John P. Byrne.
Okay. John, what is your birthday?
9847.
And what is your current address?
101 Byrne Avenue, apartment 1207, Pompano Beach, Florida 33062.
Great. And my name is Carlton Cartwright. I'm the CEO and founder of the Children's Coalition Incorporated, and my wife is in the next room in case we get a little background noise. Okay, let's see. Where were you born?
In Queens, New York,
What year?
1947.
What is your birthday?
September 8th, 1947.
Gotcha. And what branch of service did you serve in?
The Marine Corps.
Were you in any wars?
Yes, Vietnam War.
Okay. And branch of service?
Marine Corps.
Okay, thank you. Oh, sorry about that. And what was your rank when you separated?
Sergeant E5.
I take it you served in Vietnam?
Yes.
Were you drafted or did you enlist?
I enlisted
Where were you living at the time that you enlisted?
in West Babylon, New York.
Okay. And why did you join?
I always wanted to go into the service.
Why did you pick that branch?
The Army turned me down because I had allergies, and they said I couldn't go into the Special Forces. So I went home and I saw the newspaper. It said Marines landed in Vietnam, and I got back in my car and went to the Marine recruiter and said, "What can you do for me?" And he said, "What can you do for us?" And I kind of liked that attitude, and I joined.
Okay. All right. Do you recall your first days in service?
Yeah, well, I was in boot camp, which I think any Marine would tell you that they'll never forget. Yeah.
Now, tell me about it. What was boot camp and what was your training experience like? Do you remember any of your instructors? How'd you get through it?
I got through it all right, but it took a lot of physical work, very mental. You were placed in sort of mental, stressful situations. How to react to commands. Just even learning how to march takes a lot of concentration. Learning to shoot the rifle. There's no joking around there. It's very strict. And it's also very physical to get into those positions that you have to so as when you qualify, you qualify with the rifle from like standing, sitting, kneeling, different types of positions, and you have to get it down pat.
Right. Okay. Okay. So where did you depart from the States to go to Vietnam? Where did you train in boot camp?
Parris Island, South Carolina, and then from there I went up to North Carolina to Camp Geiger, which is a basic infantry training, and from there I went next door, so to speak, to Camp Lejeune, where I was assigned to a tank battalion. And I really had on-the-job training with tanks. I was only there for a few months, and then I was ordered to Vietnam. So I knew how to fire the tank. We had a little gunnery course set up, and I learned to fire the tank. Had never driven the tank. Didn't know how to turn the radios on or off. So when I got to Vietnam, I had this great sergeant, and he taught me real quick how to do everything.
Okay. All right. Where did you go? After what did you say, after the Carolinas?
Yeah, I went to Vietnam.
And you
I went to California for additional infantry training, a more advanced infantry training.
Where in California?
Camp Pendleton.
Gotcha.
And then from there we flew to Da Nang in Vietnam.
What city is Camp Pendleton near?
Oceanside.
What is it?
South of LA.
How far?
I'm not really sure. Maybe about an hour.
Okay, about 60 miles.
Something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, it's more north of San Diego, closer
Gotcha.
to San Diego.
All right. So So tell me about Vietnam. Tell me about what was that like arriving there?
The heat and the smell was enough to make you wish that you had joined the Navy. You know, it was so bad. You really don't know what to make of it. We no sooner got there, and somebody said, "Well, you got to wait for transportation. In the meantime, you can go have lunch." And there were no Applebee's or Outbacks or anything. So we went into a big tented area, which raised the heat even more. I sat down like at a picnic table, and I looked up, and the guy sitting across from me was a guy that I went to high school with. And
What
he
was
was
the
on his way
temperature?
home.
Huh? He was leaving.
He was going home, yeah. It was a
Well-
transit area.
What was the temperature? You keep mentioning the heat.
Bordering on 100, maybe over 100. It was in the height of the summer season, I guess you'd say. And
So-
you're not used to it either. You know.
Did you get any information from your friend, your high school peer?
You know, actually, he was not involved in combat, so he really didn't have much to say about that. We just talked more about home, actually.
What year was that?
1966.
Mm-hmm.
It was March of 1966.
Okay.
And then later in the afternoon, a Jeep came, picked me up, and took me about 5 miles away to a hill, 327, where our battalion headquarters was at.
Mhm.
So I was kind of in a transit area for a few weeks before I was assigned to a tank. And from there we went over to an area on the South China Sea. They refer to it as Marble Mountain.
Mhm.
And that's where they had the China Beach, where they had that TV show about
Right.
China. That was right next to where we were. And stayed there for maybe 5 or 6 weeks. And then a big part of our battalion, our company moved out to a Hill 55, which, you know, throughout the history of the Vietnam War plays kind of a big part in the Da Nang area. There was a lot that went on around there.
Why did they call that China Beach? It was in Vietnam, right?
Yeah, I don't
You
know.
know?
I think that was the name of it before we even got there.
Gotcha.
It was a perfect place to build condos, and that's which I understand that's what they have there today, hotels and condos.
Really?
Beautiful beach. Yeah.
Okay. So go ahead.
So we went out to Hill 55, and I was assigned to tank Bravo 42, which was considered a headquarters tank. And we were sort of a fill-in for other tanks, like if a tank in like first platoon went down for maintenance or it was shot up, whatever, you know, we would fill in. So we spent a lot of time working with different tank units, different infantry units, and you're pretty much in the field most of the time. So, you know, at first things went pretty light, but then I was involved in my first little bit of combat, which was sort of not like you see on TV. You know, it was very nerve-wracking, a lot of noise, a lot of smoke. Couldn't understand. I was the gunner in the tank, so I really couldn't see all that much, but just what I was shooting at.
Mm-hmm.
But with all the smoke out there, you never saw whether you were hitting anything or not, you know. But it was pretty uneventful, really, you know.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then, a short time after that, it was right at the beginning of July.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it was a little bit longer, but a friend of mine, well, what happened was at night you have to call in on the radio and give a situation report every 2 hours.
Right.
So our company is all over the place, different hills, different infantry units you're working with. So and let me just back up a little bit. Earlier in the day, this friend of mine on this tank, I don't remember the number of it, they were going back out in the field after some maintenance work. And he and I used to play checkers a lot, and I could never beat him. He was a real nice guy. His name was Joe Brown. He was from Maryland. And so as they were pulling out, I said to him, you know, don't go getting your rear end shot off. I'm still going to beat your checkers one of these days. So that night I went up on top of the tank where the radio is, and I had to call in, they call it a situation report. Basically you just say that situation normal, no enemy contact. and that's done every 2 hours
Mhm.
to keep our headquarters apprised of what we're doing.
Right.
So anyway, I go up on the tank, I turn the radio on, and I hear Joe Brown calling in his situation report. And there was some other conversation having to do with someone that had to go on R&R, so I figured, well, I'll wait another 5 minutes and then I'll try again.
Mhm.
So I climbed off the tank. 5 minutes later, I climbed back up. I turned the radio on. Now there's all kinds of excitement, high-pitched voices calling for a medevac. Somebody got hit, and yeah, I just couldn't make out much of what was going on. You couldn't figure it out. So, you know, we went through the night, you know, wondering what went on. You couldn't really call on radio and ask. That was not protocol to do that.
Right.
So the next morning, I found out that after my friend Joe Brown had finished with his situation report, as he was climbing off the tank, he got shot through the heart and killed. So that kind of bummed me out. Like, that was the first guy I knew that got killed, you know, and you know, kind of reality set in. And then from there on, our action, you know, kind of picked up. We were involved in a lot. You know, shortly after that, there were a lot of firefights and different things that happened. Not too long after that, we were sent out to the same place where Joe Brown was killed. It was called BOP 1. That stood for Bravo Outpost 1.
Mhm.
We were working with the 1st Battalion, 9th Marines, and we set up in position, which was on a river. We had one little string of concertina wire around us,
Right.
and 2 tanks, each facing, like they were back to back, facing parallel with the river,
Mhm.
and there were 8 grunts, 4 on one side closer to the river, 4 on the other, and that made up our little perimeter.
Right.
We were there as an outpost, just to observe what was going on, see if any traffic came down the river. And while we were getting set up, 2 of the guys on my tank were shot by a sniper. He fired 2 rounds, hit both of them. And I tried to get back to help them, and the guy fired at me and hit the sand right in front of me. I actually picked up the round. It was so, like, kind of surreal, you know. And then he shot another tanker on the other tank. He was handing ammunition up to the guy firing the machine gun on
Yeah.
top,
Yeah.
and he got shot through the arm. And so they called in a medevac, and when the medevac came in, that one guy that was on the other side of the river turned into about 30 guys that, you know, they created the situation so that when the helicopter come in, they opened fire on the helicopter. And I was by myself on my tank, so I had to load and fire at the same time because 2 of the guys were down and the other guy was trying to help them, you know, do first aid.
Right.
So when the helicopter landed, then they shot the gunner off the helicopter. It was a bad day. And so they finally get out of there. The two of the guys that were shot in the arm, the helicopter gunner and the tanker from the other tank, were not really hurt that bad. But the 2 guys that were on my tank that were initially shot, one was shot through the back, came out the front, and the other guy was hit in the arm, but in such a way that it shattered his forearm. I believe they were both discharged.
Okay. They survived.
Yes, they all survived, but, you know, wasn't good. You know, the injuries are like prolonged over the years, you know, in
understand.
operations and things. So, you know, those are just an afterthought of that incident. We called back to our headquarters on Hill 55, and we told them what happened, and we needed additional crew members. We needed more ammunition, and so they said to, you know, get the grunts and come back to where 1st Battalion, 9th Marines was located. I'd say about 1.5 miles away. So we went back there, and we were there a while. We were doing some maintenance on the tank, cleaning up from the firefights and the blood and stuff like that. And then I saw a small convoy of trucks coming down the road, and the 2 trucks pulled up right by where we were, And I saw, our lieutenant got off the truck, commanding officer, and he walks over to me, and I'm looking at the trucks, and on the trucks I see the other truck drivers, I see the cooks, the armorers, the maintenance people, and I only see 2 tankers. They were 3 tankers. They were to replace the 2 from my tank, 1 from the other.
Right.
And I said to the lieutenant, I don't understand why everybody, why is everybody here? Like, why are they all? They're not staying here with. I mean, like all their combat gear was all like brand new, never used. They weren't involved with combat, And he said, well, when the word came in that you needed help, and it was yelled out in our CP compound area, he said they all just ran and got their gear and jumped on the trucks. And he says, I couldn't tell them no, they couldn't come. You said you needed help, and they were coming.
That was it.
And I don't think I really understood that so much right away. I was 18 years old. It almost seemed kind of foolish at first. But I realized as I got older that is what the Marine Corps is all about.
Right.
And I think the lieutenant handled it the right way. I mean, it stuck in my head all these years.
Right. Yeah, I see. Gotcha.
I've told that to many people, and when I tell it to other Marines, they just go, "Man, well, that's what you're supposed to do."
Right. Yeah.
But to actually see them,
Respond.
but to see them do it,
Yeah.
is really something.
Uh-huh.
These are guys that never saw anything but combat from a distance.
Uh-huh.
To be thrown into it, like even their truck ride out there was probably 10 times more dangerous than they even knew. We were nervous driving a tank down that road, and they're in a truck. So,
Right.
but my whole experience in Vietnam, that to me stands out probably the most.
Right.
And from there were other situations. The man who was my tank commander, his name was Al King.
Mm-hmm.
He was a sergeant and promoted to a staff sergeant, and he was a great man, just a great man. I was a young white kid from Long Island, and he was a black man from Oakland, California, a lot of street smarts. And for some reason, he took a liking to me and sort of taught me about the world, about some of the problems that we have in our country, with racism, things like that. And I was never brought up to be, but I mean, he made me understand the world a lot more. He was a 26-year-old old man, and I was an 18-year-old kid. And I've spoke to him once since our time together, and I tried to explain to him how. I said, I don't know if you realize how much, what you did meant to me. The way you talked to me about things, and tried to sort of expand my knowledge of the world, because you spend a lot of time together and you talk about a lot of different things, and your patience, and the only time that he ever got mad at me was right towards the very end of our tour of duty there. We were both supposed to go home on the same day, and there was a truck going back to the rear area to go to the PX, and then it was to continue to another location to drop off ammo and come back. And I said to him, I want to go on the. By this point, I was the tank commander on one tank, and he was like the section leader. He's still like above. He wanted to go. So in my very immature mind, I said, no, I want to go. Come on, Daddy, let me go. And finally he said, I've been stuck here with you for 13 months, listening to your crap every time you didn't get your own way. And he says, I'm going. I said, okay. I said, all right, sorry. And so they go, and for some reason later in the day, I had to go up to our radio shack where the radio guys were, and it was up above our normal area, and I turned around after I left there, and I looked out across the field. It was miles away, it had to be 4 or 5 miles away.
Right.
And I saw an explosion. I didn't think much of it. By the time I got back down to my tent area, the communications guy is yelling to me, "The truck just hit a mine." So I was kind of besides myself, and you know. But so by now I had actually been relieved of duties. I was going home in like 2-3 days.
Right.
So the next day I asked the CO if they were sending a truck back to the hospital to get all the information, and I said, could I go on the truck? You know, I'll help out getting what we need. And he said, okay. Went to the hospital. They told us which ward he was in. Plus, everybody on the truck was hurt too. When we walked in, the driver of the truck was in the bed, like right in front there.
Yeah.
His legs were totally crushed, and they didn't know if they were going to have to amputate him. That's the last I ever heard. And then at the same time, I hear Sergeant King yell to me, you know, in a funny way. He said something like, "What are you doing here, AH?" You know, something like that. And so I walked down there, and you know, it was like I was fighting back tears, like just, you know, like, oh man, you know, like, you're okay, you're not really hurt that bad, you know. He got shrapnel on his elbow.
Right.
But it turned out they let him out of the hospital. We did end up going home together, and we had a little R&R in Okinawa. And he had been stationed there for years. He showed me around. He did like the big brother thing, you know.
Yeah.
And you know, I guess I just I'll always hold him in the highest esteem of anybody I think I've ever met. You know, he's a good man. Those are just some of the things that really stand out in my head about my experience there.
Right. Were there overall, how long were you there? 8, 13?
12 months and 26 days.
Okay. Were there a lot of casualties in your unit overall?
Yes. I can tell you an interesting fact that I learned later.
Go ahead.
When I was in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, and they came out with the orders for us to go, there were 17 of us that were being transferred, going to Vietnam. Of the 17 people, I was the only person that wasn't wounded or killed. Everybody else, one guy was killed, one guy sort of cracked up and they sent him home, and the rest of them all were wounded. I had no scratch. On my tank, I was the only person that was never wounded. My tank was the only tank out of 24 tanks in our whole company that never hit a mine. So when they wanted to send me back to Vietnam, I said, what do you think the odds are of me keeping up these statistics? You know, so were there a lot? Yeah, there were 3 tankers killed in my unit while I was there, and then I was there 66, 67. The 60s, late 67, 68, 69 were the real. That's when most of the casualties, I think, in Vietnam, the Marine Corps took place. Overall, in the Marine Corps, with the amount of tanks we had there, we had 189 tankers killed, and the wounded. I mean, it was very unlikely to find somebody that didn't have some kind of a wound.
Right.
You know, I mean, even on my, and I didn't even think of this until after I came home, but I just started thinking about these different things.
Right.
One guy got shot in the shoulder, knocked off the tank, and they put him in a Jeep, took him to the hospital. And about 5 days later, he was walking back in. It's just a little mark. It didn't hit anything, just went through the meat. You know, no bones, nothing. Yeah, so I mean, but there was a lot of that type of wounds. And then there was, you know, there was like this guy in the stomach, and, you know.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Were you a prisoner of war at all?
No.
Good.
No. I never, you know, never saw any, or never heard of anybody around my unit that was ever a prisoner of war.
Okay. Good. Were you awarded any medals or citations?
No, just the normal, like, you know, like presidential unit citation. They give you that. No, but no acts of heroism or any, you know, no silver stars or bronze stars or anything.
Got it. Okay, so let's see now. Okay, well, you pretty much gave it to me. Did you do any R&R? Did you travel while you were over there at all?
Yes, I went to Hong Kong twice.
Oh, okay. All
Yeah,
right.
it was really nice.
Mhm.
Yeah, nothing exceptional. I did a lot of resting because the first time I went, after 6 months. So I was, I was getting a little edgy by then, and I had hurt my foot. I stepped on a piece of metal,
Oh.
so I really couldn't get around too good. My foot was kind of swollen.
Went right through the boot or barefoot?
Yeah, we decided to go into this river to swim, and there was all this metal debris. And the first few of us that went in, we all got cuts on either. I got it like right across my instep.
Great.
We don't know if it was put there deliberately or not, but
Right.
I wasn't telling anybody because I wanted to go on R&R. I didn't want it to take me away, I just took care of it myself. And then I did a lot of touring of the country, especially the second time, to try to learn about Hong Kong, China, and all of that. Did a fair share of partying, but nothing too crazy.
Right. Did you stay in touch with your family?
Just letters.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there was no phones or
Right.
anything
Okay.
like that.
A lot of letter writing. Once a month. What?
No, probably once a week.
Oh, okay.
Once a
Cool.
week.
All right. All right.
Yeah.
What was the food like?
Well, if you were in the field, you were eating sea rations, and actually, when we were back at our base camp, we had a little mess hall created, and we had a cook that was of Mexican heritage, and he was a true cook. I expect he owns a restaurant somewhere today.
Oh, really?
It
Okay.
was fabulous.
Good
yeah.
food, huh?
Enjoyed it too.
Yeah. Cool.
So I don't have any complaints there. But I mean, you eat sea rations sometimes for a month or two straight when you're out in the field, and you're just eating it because if you don't, you're going to die. So
Gotta eat.
yeah, I mean, there's not much you can do to it to make it any more than what it is.
Right.
But,
No gourmet anything there, huh?
no, but it doesn't stick in my head as a terrible thing. It's like the water. You couldn't really drink the water just the way it was. You had to add Kool-Aid or something to it.
Right.
Because if you just looked at a glass of water, it had things swimming in it, and you knew you were drinking. So you didn't really use a glass, but even like a canteen cup, the metal canteen,
Yeah.
you could see little things swimming around in there.
Really?
Yeah, and that was water that was processed. Yeah, so you throw some Kool-Aid in there and try to drown whatever's in there, and then just drink it to stay alive.
I got you.
Yeah.
Okay, we won't. Okay. Did you have plenty of supplies?
Not at first. At first, it was very short on supplies.
Mhm.
I think they were still trying to get their act together there. After I was there about 3 or 4 months, then it started to come in because we were wearing boots that literally were just rotting away.
Really?
And they came in with those jungle boots that were very good, and new utilities that were, that stuff was excellent. Even I have to say the tanks that we had, excellent. Whatever the government spends on products, those tanks were phenomenal. They never broke down. I mean, you could damage them, or they could be hit by a mine or a rocket. But in a lot of cases, they do some welding and replace the broken parts, and you were back in business.
Okay.
As far as the engine and that sort of thing.
Right.
My tank never broke down, not once.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you feel pressure or stress?
Occasionally, when you knew that maybe the following day you were going to an area, you'd be involved in a sort of an operation, and you knew that was a real bad area. You had a little trouble sleeping that night.
Thought about it, huh?
Yeah,
Well,
but not
it's
so
not
much. Not so much if you were just, for argument's sake, you're just going to escort a couple of trucks out to another unit. That stuff became sort of run of the mill. And if something did happen, it happened real quick, and then you'd get that adrenaline sort of rush afterwards. But I didn't have that feeling like I was in harm's way every day. I mean, you kind of knew you were, you
Right.
know, but
Learn, you cope.
yeah, I
Cope.
think it's just that becomes your lifestyle for
Right.
that year, you know. You hope
Okay.
for the best.
How do people entertain themselves?
I read books, but you know, played cards. Not too much entertaining.
Have you stayed at every place that you traveled while you were in the service?
I'm sorry. Who did
Did you state? You know, you started out in a.
Oh, on the paper you took that?
Hmm?
You mean what I wrote?
No, I'm not worried about what you. I didn't even read that. I'm
Oh, okay.
saying you went in. Where did you go in the service?
In
Where?
Paris Island, South
Right.
Carolina.
Carolinas, and then you went
To
to.
North Carolina,
Okay.
then California,
Okay.
Vietnam,
Hong Kong.
Hong Kong. Well, Okinawa.
Okay,
Stayed in
okay.
Okinawa. We landed, going over there, we landed at Wake Island, but we just had breakfast and they refueled the plane, so I didn't see much of that.
Right.
And then when I came back to California, I got on another plane right away and went to Camp Lejeune. I was stationed there,
Where's that?
North Carolina, Jacksonville, North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
And then a few months after I was there, we would put on ships and we went down to the Caribbean for the winter,
Mm.
which was rough. And
In a good way, right?
best place I ever spent the winter. Unbelievable. I didn't want to come home. But we'd go down to this island called Vieques off Puerto Rico, and we'd play war games, practice with
Oh,
weapons, things like
okay.
that. It was pretty cool. There's no stress involved in that.
Gotcha.
And plus, we were very experienced by that point, so
Right.
And then in between, we would be on the ship, and we would go to different islands like St. Thomas, Barbados,
Oh.
and we'd have liberty on these different places.
Right.
And the only thing we did that was kind of tough, we were sent to Panama, and we went through the Army Jungle Survival School. It was run by the Special Forces and the Army Rangers.
Right.
And they were excellent, really. Excellent school, excellent teachers, real professional.
Okay.
And but it was tough. I mean,
Yeah.
that jungle was a real jungle.
Yeah.
And of course, now we're acting like infantry. We didn't have our tanks. We were all just sent there as infantry. So we took a lot of kidding from the infantry guys about us having to walk now because we were used to riding.
Right. Well, that was jungle in Vietnam, right?
Well,
Not like
not
this.
like that.
Thank
That's a true jungle that goes on and on forever.
Yeah.
In Vietnam, where I was, it could be broken up. You could have that in one area, but go a few miles away, and it became more rice paddies and stuff like that.
Gotcha.
When we flew out of, we were picked up by helicopters and taken out of Panama back to where our ships were.
Right.
And that's a memory that'll always stick in my head. We loaded onto these helicopters in the roof. Had to run up a hill, go in the rear door. The helicopter lifted up, and I was sitting by the back. It was open, and we flew right over the Panama Canal.
Mm-hmm.
It was one of the most beautiful things I ever saw.
Really?
Yeah, it was really, one of those good memories that stays in your head.
Yeah.
And then we landed. I don't remember what the name of the city was there, but a big field, and then we were taken by trucks back to our ships.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I just did out the remainder of my time in Camp Lejeune. I have a few different jobs now. I worked in an office for a little while, and was like the head of maintenance in our area for a couple of months. Just wherever they needed a sergeant.
Right.
Which at that time we had a lot of sergeants because
Yeah.
everybody got promoted in Vietnam.
Uh-huh.
And then I got out in, when did I get out? I think April or May of 1969.
Right.
Yeah. I can always remember exactly when I went in, but getting out time was a little fuzzy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just to close this segment out, you remember any particularly humorous or unusual events besides the ones you already have mentioned?
Well, there was there was this one sergeant who was in maintenance, and I guess we were all a little bored, and I started, to him I was like a young kid, and he was like an old man, he was probably 30 or something.
Yeah.
And I was sort of teasing him about being an old man and stuff like that. And he was getting kind of frustrated with me. And the last thing I did was he went to light a cigarette. I reached up and I smacked the cigarette out of his face. And he lunges at me, he grabs me, and he's like choking me. But he wasn't really choking,
Yeah.
Well, our CO turned the corner and saw the sergeant. And it appeared that he was going to be in a lot of trouble for beating up,
Right.
So I had to say, no, that's not what happened. You just turned the corner at the wrong time. I said, it was me provoking him. And I said, we're just joking around.
Yeah.
And he's so mad by now. He said, I'm not joking. You don't mess with me again. I'm going to really choke you. And I'm telling, shut up. This guy thinks we're really fighting. So, it's just the other thing, and it had to do with the maintenance department, was they had a monkey. His name was Chico, and he used to ride around on the retriever vehicle that would pull the broken tanks.
Right.
And they had him tied up to a little tree behind their hut.
Mm-hmm.
I hated this monkey because it was nasty. It was just nasty, and I don't know. They said they were going to do something to me with the monkey. I said, you keep that monkey away from me. I said, if it gets near him, I'm going to shoot it. And we had next morning we had a formation where we would all get in line, and the CO or somebody would come out and tell us, who's scheduled to go on R&R, basically nothing. But
Right.
so I'm in the front row, this big, like a gunnery sergeant, old guy,
Yeah.
bald head, totally big, heavy set guy. And his name was Buddha. They called him Sergeant Buddha because this is what he looked like,
Uh-huh.
Anyway, he reached behind his head. The monkey was sitting on his head, and he poked the monkey in the rear end. The monkey jumped up in the air, came down on my head, and he's got me, like this. And it just, that creepy feeling where you feel like your skin's crawling. So I took out my .45, and I'm trying to shoot the monkey, but not hit myself,
Right.
So the monkey jumps off, and this young lieutenant that was holding this formation, he's like, his eyes are popping open, and he says, what's going on? What are you doing? And I got my .45, which wasn't even loaded or anything, but I told you I'm going to shoot that monkey, and I go running after it, and the monkey, of course, is so fast.
Yeah.
And it just ended up looking like everybody was laughing, and this poor lieutenant had no idea what was going on. It looked like something you'd see in like a MASH TV show or something like that. But I always got a kick out of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you recall the day your service ended? Where were you?
I was in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, and I had gotten released a little bit early. I think they were winding down with the troops by then,
Okay.
And all I did was, on the last day, I had to have all my gear on a bed. They inspected it, I guess, checked it, had turned in everything, like, whatever weapon you
Right.
carried, turned that all in, and a few papers were signed, a few hands were shook, and got in the car and drove home.
Gotcha. I'm gonna give you all of this stuff, pretty much. Several questions. What did you do in the days and weeks afterwards? Did you work or go back to school? Was your education supported by the GI Bill? Did you make? Okay, go ahead.
All right, I did use the GI Bill to take a variety of classes.
Mm.
My plan was to try to get onto the New York City Police Department. My cousin owned a machine shop, so initially I went to work for him, working in the machine shop basically at minimum wage, hating every minute of it. I'd actually thought about re-enlisting, because it seemed like I was going nowhere. And
Right.
and then a friend of mine told me, I guess I was out about 6 months. A friend of mine told me that the Long Island Railroad was hiring people, So the next day I went down there and they hired me like right on the spot.
Huh.
And I ended up working there for 31 years and I retired. And I did take some courses along the way. I knew computers were, you know, getting into my field of work.
Right.
And, you know, I took some through the GI Bill, and I did end up at one point working on I worked in the operations office, like an air traffic controller, but with trains.
Right.
And they computerized the whole place. So I ended up on a project for about a year, putting this whole thing together, you know, with the computer people and another person from my department.
Right.
So I ended up, like I said, working there 31 years. In the end, I was the chief train dispatcher, which you're in charge of the whole operation of things. At night and on weekends, you're like the president of the railroad. You know, it's you.
Right.
You call all the shots. So it was a very stressful job at times. We had to deal with a lot of life and death type situations. I know you wouldn't think that, but you have a lot of people that commit suicide on the railroad. You have a lot of accidents where people fall under trains, and we used third rail power to propel the trains, the electricity, and you know, you had to, it was like reading blueprints. You had to learn how to read how the power is funneled to the tracks.
Right.
And so in an event of something happening, you had to take the power off. If you didn't do it right, it could mean somebody else getting hurt. So it was a very exacting type of thing. And then your instructions to the train crews, there was no room for error. So
Precision.
yeah, and you had to take charge. And I think, you know, my Marine Corps, just being in the service experience of learning how to take orders and give orders really helped. You know, I had a reputation for, if I told somebody to do something, you know, they were going to do it. That was it. And I never had anybody turn me down, you know.
Okay.
So, you know, but I felt that my military experience really helped me in that line of work.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Good. Did you make any close friends? You continue any of the relationships?
From my service days?
Yeah.
I did make close friends at the time, but not, you know, you lose contact.
Gotcha.
I do now belong to the Vietnam Tankers Association, and we have a reunion every 2 years. So I have met some people there that I was acquainted with in Vietnam, or people, so I met someone that we both knew of these other people, you know. It's been very rewarding. I enjoyed it now. You know, you
Okay.
look at things differently. It's nice camaraderie, nice people.
I know you're a little pressed for time. The round of questions, this is a closing.
Okay.
The round of questions I'm going to go through, you've really stated, you've answered a lot of this.
Okay.
But I'm just going to close it up. And at the very end, I'm going to ask, is there anything that you feel like you left out, anything else that you want to mention? And just
Okay.
try to hold on to that. We know what you did for a career after the war. Did your military experience influence your thinking about war, about the military in general? If in a veterans organization, you know, did you participate in any activities? Do you attend reunions? How did your service and experiences affect your life? I think you really
Right.
answered a lot of that.
Right.
And is there anything else that you'd like to add? So, what do you say? You know,
Yeah, I know where you go.
how were you influenced?
Well, when I initially got out of the service, you know, the war, Vietnam War was still going on. It was very unpopular. And I think I tried to put most of it in the back of my head for many years. And then I started to, it started to come out. And I found myself driving a lot of times without really knowing how I got to where I was. And I think I was going through like that post-traumatic stress.
Right.
And occasionally where I worked, there would be an accident. If I was out in the field, I'd have to go. One time in particular, a train had hit a car, and the people in the car were all Chinese. It was a whole family, a mother, father, and grandmother, and a bunch of kids. The car had stalled on the tracks, and rather than get out, they stayed in the car. They were all killed. They owned a Chinese restaurant. They were on their way home to eat dinner. So they had, the car was filled with bags of Chinese food. And when I got there, the bodies were still all over the place, and the whole area smelled like Chinese food. And it was raining out. It was at night, about 7 o'clock at night in the winter. And that put me in a really bad state of mind for a long time, because it was like seeing the bodies from Vietnam and smelling like if you went into a village, it was the same smell of food. And I had a lot of trouble concentrating on what I had to do. I was really getting like flashbacks throughout that whole night. You know, I had to work with the police and different emergencies from the railroad's side. You know.
Right.
I have no hard feelings. I think the service for me was one of the best things I ever did. You know, I do have trouble with some of the incidents that happened. I was involved in a firefight one time where I shot a person that was running, and it turned out to be a woman. And that's always been a little hard to live with, you know. I didn't know at the time, you know, I mean, I didn't know when I fired, but when they checked everything out, they came back and told me it was a woman. I mean, she could have been the enemy, I don't know, but,
Right.
you know, but it sort of sticks in your head.
Mm-hmm.
And I, you know, like I said, I do belong to the Vietnam Tankers Association. We have a good time, we spend 4 days in different cities. The last one was this year in San Diego. We honor a fallen tanker from Vietnam, and also someone who's died at an older age. One of us and the families come, and you know, we sort of honor the person. We have speakers from different parts of the Marine Corps. We have an honor guard come in, and you know, we have our little serious side, but we also have a lot of fun too, and I really enjoy that. And I think hearing other people's stories too, there,
Right.
as long as they don't sound like fish stories, you know, I think that's helpful. You know,
Yeah.
you know, I think you look at it a lot different when you're older. You know, I don't think an older person could be in the service. You know, not running around the woods. You know, as an infantry person.
Well, no. I mean, not unless they stay in that great shape for.
I just mean mentally, you know.
Oh, I got you.
Yeah. If you're 60 years old and somebody says charge that hill, you know, you might want to say why. What's in it for me? You know.
It's like jumping out of that plane.
That's right.
It's a perfectly good
Yeah. No real
dry
good reason.
spot right
Yeah.
here. Okay. Well, that was very interesting.
Oh,
I believe that was one of the best interviews that I've actually accumulated.
oh, good.
We've
Yeah.
gotten
It's
done.
hard to put it together in your head real quick. It's a long time ago, but you know, I think it's worth doing. You know.
The interview?
Yeah, like I think
This stuff comes back.
right, and
You sit there and think about it, you start talking about it.
right.
I've seen that.
Yeah.
Some guys, you really get started, like some of the older guys, World War II.
Oh boy.
You get those guys started, man, they start remembering stuff that they had totally forgotten.
Well, I think because I go to the VA center and I do see a counselor and we talk about things, well, it's more fresh in my head because of that than if I was coming here straight from 40 years separation
Right.
from the military, and going to the reunions, a lot of things. You know, I told you about that truck that was blown up with my friend in it.
Yeah.
I was at one of the reunions, first one I went to, and this guy comes over, standing talking. This guy come over. He goes, "You know what? This is my first time." He says, "I would love to find somebody that knew about this incident that happened to me. I just got into Vietnam. They put me on this truck, and they told me I was going to go out to the Bravo Company 3rd Tanks, and we hit a mine." And I go, "What do you want to know about it?" I knew
there.
everything about it.
Yeah.
I said, I saw the truck the next day. I
Yeah.
went to the hospital and saw the,
Wow.
you know. So I've spoken to him twice now. The only problem is he likes his beer, and he's a little hard to talk to sometimes after he's a little, you know. But he's always interested. He wants to talk, he wants to learn more, but he doesn't seem to remember what I told him.
Okay.
But
All right.
Yep. All right. What time we got?
We got
we're good.
time to 4:34.